Okay. Do you want to read?
Yeah, can you read today? I think we do.
So we're reading The Power of Now, Chapter 8. And we are on Enlightened Relationships. And show me again, tap again where you want me to start.
Right here.
Okay. Page 163. Okay. So this is our first time we're recording this, like live in our pajamas.
Oh, okay.
Just letting you know. All right. I mean, on a videotape. We've recorded on audio before, but never video. So we're going to have a vulnerability hangover later. That'll be fun.
Why,
Especially as you're eating
why
here,
did it do that?
because it'll go to whoever's talking.
Wow. I wasn't talking though.
You're talking in your heart.
Okay.
All right. Let's briefly look again at the scenario I have just described. Every challenge that it contains is actually a disguised opportunity for salvation. At every stage of the unfolding dysfunction, at every stage of the unfolding dysfunctional process, freedom from unconsciousness is possible. For example, the woman's hostility could become a signal for the man to come out of his mind-identified state, awaken into the now, become present, instead of becoming more identified with his mind, even more unconscious. Instead of being the pain body, the woman could be the knowing that watches the emotional pain in herself, thus accessing the power of the now and initiating the transmutation of the pain. Geez, we just started really deep in this.
No.
I have to read it again. I'm going to start back just a little bit. This is only one of an endless number of possible scenarios. Many volumes have been written, and many more could be written about the ways in which unconsciousness is brought out in male-female relationships. But, as I said earlier, once you understand the root of the dysfunction, you do not need to explore its countless manifestations. Because it's redundant then. Let's briefly look again at the scenario I have just described. Every challenge that it contains is actually a disguised opportunity for salvation. And that word now means healing. Salve to me. I've had to be intentional about redefining that word. Every challenge that it contains is actually a disguised opportunity for healing. Salve, salvation. At every stage of the unfolding dysfunctional process, freedom from unconsciousness is possible. For example, the woman's hostility could become a signal for the man to come out of his mind-identified state, awaken into the now, become present, instead of becoming even more identified with his mind, even more unconscious, Instead of being the pain body, the woman could be the knowing that watches the emotional pain in herself, thus accessing the power of the now and initiating the transmutation of the pain. This would remove the compulsive and automatic outward projection of it. Yeah, because it's all projection. She could then express her feelings to her partner. There is no guarantee, of course, that he will listen, but it gives him a good chance to become present and certainly breaks the insane cycle of the involuntary acting out of old mind patterns. If the woman misses that opportunity, the man could watch his own mental, emotional reaction to her pain, his own defensiveness. Rather than being the reaction, he could be the observer of the reaction. He could then watch his own pain body being triggered and thus bring consciousness into his emotions. It's kind of just seeing it all as a drama that you're playing and asking yourself what you're bringing to the scene and asking, like a director, like, do you see the pain in your partner? How does that make you feel, like, as an actor? And are you sharing your pain with him? Like a director would come in if it was like seen as a story that we're telling, and like removing ourselves from identifying with the actor, but realizing we're playing a part, we're playing a role that we have assumed, but it's not really us, and kind of analyzing the scene, so to speak, because it's always a scene. I mean, Shakespeare said life is a stage. We are all but actors. Some of us are better butt actors than others. The man could watch his own mental emotional reaction to her pain, his own defensiveness, rather than being the reaction. He would be the observer. He could then watch his own pain body being triggered and thus bring consciousness into his emotions. In this way, a clear and still space of pure awareness would come into being, the knowing, the silent witness, the watcher. This awareness does not deny the pain and yet is beyond it. This awareness does not deny the pain and yet it is beyond it. It allows the pain to be and yet transmutes it at the same time. It accepts everything and transforms everything. A door would have opened up for her through which she could easily join him in that space. It's funny because Brene Brown does a thing with her husband where when they're having an argument, she stops and says, "The story in my head is," and then she tells him the story in her head about the conflict that they're having or about what he said, instead of going, "You're saying I'm fat," or "You're saying I'm dumb." It's the story in my head is, and then he could go, "What are you talking about? That's not what I'm saying at all." And it gives the opportunity to step back and observe the relationship and be conscious of it, which is actually kind of brilliant.
Yeah. Oh,
So glad we got that on camera.
that's a freebie.
If you are consistently or at least predominantly present in your relationship, this will be the greatest challenge for your partner. They will not be able to tolerate your presence for very long and stay unconscious. If they are ready, they will walk through the door that you opened for them and join you in that state. If they are not, you will separate like oil and water. The light is too painful for someone who wants to remain in darkness. This is my favorite part of the chapter. It's called Why Women Are Closer to Enlightenment. But do you have any thoughts about what I just read about being conscious of your relationship dynamic while you're in the relationship and voicing it, or at least being conscious of it? I feel like that happened yesterday while we were reading, when we said, hey, we do this. And it was sort of liberating because it was like we realized it was just a story in our head and like a habit or attribution, projection onto the other. Do you want me to go on? Or do you have thoughts?
I have nothing to say except that that's what I do when we have our conflicts or
What do you do? Explain it.
well, I become conscious of my thoughts, what I'm thinking, what you're thinking,
Do you feel like it's a play you're watching?
and I'll say something like, why is she so angry at me? You know? And then I'm like, and then I start thinking about your work and all of that. And then anyways, I end up realizing that, oh, she's not angry at me. She's frustrated with her work. She's frustrated with herself. She's frustrated. I'm not saying that I try to throw it back on you. That's not,
Right, but
but I'm
most of
like,
it is us
I,
projecting
I'm
something.
observing the anger. I'm observing the frustration, and I know it's coming from a different place. It's not. That's not even. It's not. It's not even me. It's not even about me leaving the door open. It's not about that. It's about other things. And I'm pretty good
Well,
at
it's
it.
also kind of about you leaving the door open. I mean, it is kind of. That's not an
Well,
attribution.
yeah, but
To say you left the door open is an observation. It's not an attribution. It's not a
but it is.
I'm not implying anything. Now, if I
But
say you leave the
your
door open on
reaction
purpose,
to it and screaming bloody murder at me, like as if I had done something just
yes,
heinous,
that is true.
I'm like, oh, what's going
This is
on
not about the
here?
door.
This is not about the door.
Yeah.
Initially, it is,
Yes.
but your reaction to it,
The
it,
door literally opens the door to my emotions
yes,
and everything that
yeah.
every way I feel disrespected, every way I feel unheard, every way I feel diminished in my own life, in my own story, in my head. You've opened the door.
Yeah,
See what I did there?
I
You've
feel
opened
like
the door to the,
I am the object of your projection.
yes.
And so you're going to project all of that onto me in this moment, in this instant. I don't know, maybe it's because you feel safe that you can do that, or you just need to do it. And
Yeah. I mean,
I'm the only other person in the house. So
well, there's a lot of reasons why, but you're right. It's not just about the door.
doesn't,
It's never just about the thing. It's
no,
always
I
about the
think
thing
there's
behind the thing.
comedians who do sets on this. It's not really about the door. It's not really about, I think, well, what else I screw up with? Uh,
I'll find some for you. All right. Let's move on to why women are closer to enlightenment, shall we?
Yeah, let's get to the good part.
Hey, I didn't say it. Eckhart Tolle said it, so take it up with him. Are the obstacles to enlightenment the name? I'm sorry. I these glasses are foggy.
Everyone use these?
Yeah, can you clean these like on your shirt while I use these? 'Cause I know with a tissue. Oh yeah, these are better. Are the obstacles to enlightenment the same for a man as for a woman? Yes, but the emphasis is different. Generally speaking, it is easier for a woman to feel and be in her body, so she is naturally closer to being and potentially closer to enlightenment than a man. This is why many ancient cultures instinctively chose female figures or analogies to represent or describe the formless and transcendental reality. Ooh, there's that word. It was often seen as a womb that gives birth to everything in creation and sustains and nourishes it during its life as form. In the Tao Te Ching, one of the most ancient and profound books ever written, the Tao, which could be translated as being, is described as infinite, eternally present, the mother of the universe. Naturally, women are closer to it than men since they virtually embody the unmanifested. What is more, all creatures and all things must eventually return to the source. All things vanish into the Tao, it alone endures. Since the source is seen as female, this is represented as the light and dark sides of the archetypal feminine in psychology and mythology. The goddess or divine mother has two aspects. She gives life and she takes life. When the mind took over and humans lost touch with the reality of their divine essence, they started to think of God as a male figure. Society became male dominated and the female was made subordinate to the male.
Read that again. Start again.
When the mind?
Yeah.
When the mind took over and humans lost touch with the reality of their divine essence. It's funny the pairing of the mind taking over and losing the divine essence. It's like the whole garden, the tree of the knowledge, the tree of the mind, is when we lost our divine essence. When we started making things bad, good, right, wrong, left, right, dark, light. We moved from divine essence to mind, to the
Yeah.
tree of the knowledge of who's bad, who's good.
It was the age of reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it took over Christianity too.
Well, don't you think Christ was feminine in that he he brought a feminine idea of softness and nurture and maternal and I mean unconditional love, things that we usually associate with mothers.
Yeah, you know, it makes me think of, the first miracle of the changing the water into wine. I don't know why, but it brings that where
Because his mother
where
asked him to do it?
where his mother asks him to do it, and he says, my time isn't, the time is not now. And but he changes his mind. It's really interesting.
Well, it's his mind that resisted. It was the divine intuition that initiated that. And it was the mind that resisted that. And then the mind was changed. The mind did not resist the divine essence of the maternal.
And didn't he say something like, do whatever she tells you to do?
Yes,
Says just do whatever she tells you to
yes.
do. And in essence, almost kind of like, you know, she she brought me into the world, she can take me out.
I was going to say he was deferring to her divine feminine, but okay, that's even better.
Well, I'm just going along with the reading. They give life and they can take life away.
Yeah, although I mean, I understand it's talking about the cycle of life, how we have the cycle of life is birth, life, death, birth, life. I mean, if you're looking at like Mother Nature or just creation and nature is the cycle. It's not like taking life violently, although nature can be. Um, when the mind took over and humans lost touch with the reality of their divine essence, they started to think of God as a male figure. Society became male dominated, and the female was made subordinate to the male. That was not the natural order of things. People try to project that onto the creation myth, but I don't see that from the creation myth, except for what people have projected onto that. The male dominated, I mean, in a way, she took the lead there, like Mary took the lead with the wine and the water. She said, eat the apple. If it was a male dominated garden, that would never have happened.
I what I what I think she became subjected to was was the fact that now there was like I don't know how to put it. There was a this not competition between the two, but in a way, and it's almost as if that physically he was more powerful than her. That because there was now this I
Duality.
don't want to say enmity between the two, but
That's the word that was used, though, wasn't it? I mean,
is it
I'm
enmity?
no
Enmity?
master of divinity, but
But now there was this friction, between the two. This and because he was physically more powerful, he could
be dominant.
be dominant in that way. You know what I'm saying? It was like, well, now you are submissive to the man. It just kind of the psychology of that.
Well, I imagine now if you lived in a world where it wasn't this perfect, blissful world, but it was a world now of duality, of good and evil, right and wrong, danger and safety. There would be a need to be secure. There would need to be a need to build shelter and fight off wild animals. And so now that brute force, that power has currency because now we've introduced dualism. We've introduced good, bad, right, wrong, and power or weakness is now in play. And so if you have someone who is physically has upper body strength and it would make sense that, but you look at other cultures where there's a goddess and those powerful men serve that goddess. They protect her. When you look at nature, you look at bees, they protect the queen. It's not their worker bees. Their job is to protect the person that brings life to the hive. And they use their power to serve, not to lord over and to dominate, but to serve this divine essence, this female, this nurturer, this person that's going to bring life into the world and sustain it in her body and even after. And so power is not seen as something that assigns you dominance. It's seen as something that serves the larger hive. And I think that's where we have taken that and misunderstood what power is for. Don't you
Yeah.
think?
Well, I think that it wasn't just this. So now you have to submit. What was naturally being played out was here they were one, right? Now they're two,
Dualism.
and now there's an ego, right? And now the mind submits to the ego. So it's just kind of almost like the natural progression of that,
Of dualism.
of dualism.
Because prior there was no dualism. It was Trinitarian.
No, and they, yeah, and
It
they,
was it was it was man, woman, God. There was a
yeah.
circle. There was no I'm better, you're worse. I'm more powerful, you're weak. There was none of
Well,
that. It was
they
all
didn't see themselves outside of that relationship. You know what I'm saying?
no, so it's the idea that we're separate that creates dualism
Yeah.
because it takes the third component, which is our godness, out of the equation and it strips it out. So we're just left with what we think is real, which is male, female. And we really are transcendent of that in the garden. We're one. There's no separating that. It's one thing.
Yeah. So now that there is this enmity between them,
What does enmity mean? It sounds like enemy.
I know.
Alexa, what does enmity mean?
Enmity means deep-seated hatred or hostility between people.
So it's a hostility or hatred. Wow, that's strong language.
Hostility is a state of unfriendliness or antagonism.
Thanks, Alexa. We're good. We got it from here.
Often arising from specific situations.
And because they now see each other as individuals, there's a competition, there is a threat. You know what I'm saying? When you see yourself outside of that oneness.
When you imagine you're separate, that's how I like to see it. When you imagine that you're separate, that person is now a threat to you. And you're trying to get back to oneness, and you imagine you're not already there. You imagine you don't already have that. It's all a story that we've told ourselves that we're separate.
And because man is physically more stronger and dominant, then he's pretty much going to have his way, or try to have his way.
Look at the bird. See if she eats the greens. She doesn't seem interested in them. I wonder if she'll
She
throw them
has
out.
greens all around her out there in the net.
Hey, shh, you used to bring them to the birds? I know they're in a cage. I'm just curious. Yeah, she's not interested in the greens. Did you see that? That was like huge, like bumblebee that went up. All right, I'm going to keep reading. I am not suggesting a return to earlier female representations of the divine. Some people now use the term goddess instead of God. They are redressing a balance between male and female that was lost a long time ago. And that is good. That is very good. Let's return to what it originally was. But it is still a representation and a concept, perhaps. Temporarily useful, just as a map or a signpost is temporarily useful, but more a hindrance than a help when you are ready to realize the reality beyond all concepts and images. Yeah, because you're still fighting over dualism. Is it a god? Is it a goddess? You're still in dualism. What does remain true, however, is that the energy frequency of the mind appears to be essentially male. The mind resists, fights for control. Woman, it's not my time. That's the male mind. The mind resists, fights for control, uses, manipulates, attacks, tries to grasp and possess. Manifest destiny begins with man. The mind resists, fights for control, uses, manipulates, attacks, tries to grasp and possess, and so on. This is why the traditional God is a patriarchal, controlling authority figure, and often angry man who you should live in fear of, as the Old Testament suggests. This God is a projection of the human mind. It's like you always say, God made man in his image, and then we returned the favor.
You know, to tell the servants to do whatever she tells you to do, that's mind-boggling. Because there's a humility there. Because the macho man obviously would object to that, wanting complete control of the situation, you know. It's like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah,
I'm God,
the
universe, you don't tell me what to do.
machismo
You don't tell me what
would
to
see this in a scene in a home where the mother or the wife comes in and says, you need to do this instead. And he's like, no, I don't want, you need to do this. And he goes, do whatever she says. He's whipped.
Well,
He's whipped.
if he came, if ultimately he came to die, then that's where it begins.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
That's where it begins.
Wow.
To humble himself to the point of death in Philippians 2. Well, where does it begin? It begins right there. That's the beginning of his dying. Saying, do whatever she tells you to do.
I wonder what their relationship was like in his teenage years. I mean, we get a hint of it when he's at the temple and they leave, and it's like, where the hell is Jesus? And they have to go all the way back, and he's yakking with the teachers, and he doesn't say, I'm so sorry. I should have let you know. I'm so sorry. You know, I got caught up. It's like, don't you know? I'm in my father's house, or whatever he says, you know.
Because in my mind, I'm like, how could you put her power above you in that moment? You know?
But if you realize there is no other, that we're all one, and that there's a feminine voice and a masculine voice in our oneness, you defer to that wisdom at the time you need to. It's not, we think of things dualistically. We think of, well, he's higher than her. We think of things um, hierarchical. Well, he's higher and superior. She's inferior. And, or we objectify the woman. Do not touch the flower of my lady. That whole, like, it's something separate. And it's not separate. It's not separate, because those monks that said that also possess the feminine within them, and they have objectified it out here instead of internalizing it and being whole and being one with that within themselves. And that's the other thing we do, is we objectify it as something we use, or we save, or we're chivalry, like, instead of realizing it's all part of us, it's all one. We cast it out, and we make it something other, and it's not. We all come from a woman. We all carry feminine within. And I think when we deny the feminine in a man, we deny, in many ways, what's best about him. And you look at men that are the most attractive men, and we've always said that, they possess a feminine, and I'm not talking about magazine cover attractive, I'm talking about truly attractive. They possess, like Bobby, there's something holy, there's something sacred when you see that feminine side of a man, just like when you see his strength and a good mind in a woman. It's there's a wholeness there that is the way it was supposed to be, but we have cast it out, and we've separated it. These are feminine traits, these are masculine traits. Act like a man, be a lady, and we've extracted this beautiful wholeness of having that other side within us. We fear it, when really it's to return back to what was originally intended, that we are all made of God, who's neither female or male, but both and. Both and. That's the phrase. Both and.
Both ends.
Okay, I'm almost done.
Come on, oh enlightened one, read more.
I'm picking up on your sarcasm. They are redressing a balance between male and female that was lost a long time ago. But it is still a representation and a concept, the term goddess, perhaps temporarily useful, just as a map or a signpost is temporarily useful, but more a hindrance than a help when you are ready to realize the reality beyond all concepts and images, God versus goddess. What does remain true, however, is that the energy frequency of the mind appears to be essentially male. The mind resists, fights for control, uses, manipulates, attacks, tries to grasp and possess, and so on. Wow. To go beyond the mind and reconnect with a deeper reality of being, very different qualities are needed. Surrender, non-judgment, and openness that allows life to be instead of resisting it. the capacity to hold all things in the loving embrace of your knowing. That's Jesus. Surrender, non-judgment, openness, instead of resisting, capacity to hold all things in the loving embrace of your knowing. All these qualities are much more closely related to the female principle. Whereas mind energy is hard and rigid, being energy is soft and yielding, and yet infinitely more powerful than mind. Wow.
So maybe that's what he was doing. He was submitting to the female, to the feminine
Within himself, even.
when he said, do whatever she tells you to do.
Yeah.
And then he ends up doing what she tells him to do.
And his entire relationship to women.
That's surrendering. That's not getting all macho, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You're going, who do you think you are? I created the universe, blah, blah, just.
I could smite you. And even how women were so comfortable engaging with him about theological arguments about which mountain do you say that God, is God's mountain, or whatever, the women at the well, or even Martha going, where were you? If you'd been here, Lazarus wouldn't have died. Or why didn't you tell Mary to come help? Like, the comfort that these women had to speak to him the way they did speaks more of him and his openness to the feminine than anything else. It's really kind of interesting to think about that.
Yeah. What's also interesting to me is
Finish chewing.
I have never had any trouble submitting to female authority. I've never, like, whether it be Carolyn Kitchell, whether it be Betty Fisher, whether it be, whoever it was, my supervisor in the prison. I never thought, I'm a guy.
Well, no, you helped your
Why
mom
are
in the kitchen.
Why are you telling me what to do? You
Yeah.
can't be telling me what to do, Never, ever,
Yeah.
ever has those type of thoughts crossed or entered my mind. I always just saw them as a person who was in charge and given this role and this position, and I need to
But
submit.
you are resistant to masculine energy in authority sometimes. And you are resistant to masculine energy from women when women are more operating out of a masculine energy, that you're resistant to that more than a soft feminine energy from a man or a woman. I think you resonate more with the feminine energy than the masculine energy in authority. Which is why I think
That is true.
I think that's why you loved working with Bo so much, because Bo knew his power and he knew how to affirm, and he knew how to get down on his knee and talk to a kid. He knew how to have a relationship with the custodians, people that some leaders would ignore. Bo saw their value, and that feminine nurture, divine feminine that you saw in him is what made him a good leader for you. When he was operating out of that. And of course, anyone can leave that.
There's a lot of truth to that. Because not only was he a jock, he was an amazing athlete, but he loved theater.
Yeah. He loved music and art. Things normally we associate with the feminine side of ourselves,
Yeah.
that we all have.
He loved literature, and he loved stories, and he loved, all the things we consider
theatrical,
more feminine, the theater, the arts.
And I think that's one of the reasons you love working with Mr. Warren, because he's also he's very in touch with his feminine side.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and social justice and caring for the marginalized, and and good art films, and
Yeah.
there's
yeah.
a yeah. But then I've also heard you talk about there are times when you've had female leaders that you bristle are women, and it's usually because they're operating out of a control.
They're
Uh,
operating out of the mind.
out of
the mind.
an imbalanced masculine mind.
Yeah.
Right.
They gotta overcompensate.
And they do. Why do they have to? Because women have to overcompensate, because we are only allowed in if we behave like the men, and we bluster our way in, because our society has created this hierarchy. And then when they do, we resent them because they're not acting like women. So it's you can't rise unless you act like a man, but if you act like a man in leadership, then you're a bitch. So it's a very, very hard to be a strong woman leader and not compensate, to prove that you can do the mind part of the job. It's tricky. Tracy was good at it.
Carolyn Kitchell was
Kitchell was good at it, but it's not. And then you've got queen bee syndrome, where you've got to compete against all the other women,
There was just
who
the
are
security in knowing who they were to the
Well-
point where they didn't have to overcompensate or,
right.
be
But because of
like a
scarcity,
man.
or the illusion of scarcity, we feel competitive for those positions because there are very few women in those positions. And so it creates this anomaly in our character that is not always healthy and balanced, because the system's broken and there's not enough seats at the table. And so women behave in this queen bee syndrome, which is the result of patriarchy. So I always want to say, well, men, you have only yourselves to blame for that. You've set up the system that make women have to be anomalies like that. Whereas mind energy is hard and rigid, being energy is soft and yielding, and yet infinitely more powerful than the mind. Energy. The mind runs our civilization, whereas being is in charge of all life on our planet and beyond. Being is the very intelligence whose visible manifestation is the physical universe. Although women are potentially closer to it, men can also access it within themselves, which we were just talking about.
Yeah.
At this time, the vast majority of men, as well as women, are still in the grip of the mind, identified with the thinker and the pain body. This, of course, is what prevents enlightenment and the flowering of love. As a general rule, the major obstacle for men tends to be the thinking mind, and the major obstacle for women, the pain body. Although in certain individual cases, the opposite may be true, and in others, the two factors may be equal. I'm so glad he said that. And that's the end of that section. Do you want to stop there?
Yeah.
Okay. Signing off.